industry obviously is getting commoditized, and generally speaking, specialty chemicals have enjoyed much higher returns. So what this chart here shows on the x-axis is the total shareholder returns on various specialty chemical segments on the x-axis over the last 10 years or so. And on the y-axis, it shows how those market segments performed in the last year, right, in the first half of 2022. And obviously, it was a bad year. It was a challenging year. Pretty much every single segment except mining and oil field, and to a certain extent fertilizers, had a positive return in the market. Most of the other segments performed very poorly. But if you look at the same data over time, right, and you take a larger view of the market, right, a larger timestamp, and you look at how those markets have evolved, what we have here is how some of these segments changed over the last few years as opposed to, let's say, what their performance looked like over the entire decade. And essentially, we saw pretty significant increase in returns for most of these specialty chemical markets, which is why we see that emphasis on specialty chemicals and specialty materials across the different companies. Now, what is interesting is that a lot of this growth has come because of growth in places like China and emerging markets. So this traditional view that a lot of the specialty chemicals capacity was in, let's say, the OECD, is being challenged quite significantly by new capacity that is coming up in China. I think we talked about this earlier as well, but a lot of the production capacity growth that we expect over the next 10 years is going to be centered in China, essentially posing fairly significant competitive pressures to a lot of the assets, specialty chemical production assets that are, for example, in US and to a certain extent, Europe. We don't see big changes irrespective of the economic climate going forward in terms of what will happen to growth rates in a lot of these specialty chemical segments. Some of them we expect to grow well above GDP over the next few years or so. So some of that hasn't really changed. What is interesting is, and I think this was brought up by Bob in his presentation as well, when he talked about how there is an effort to fight this commoditization that is happening in traditional market segments by working on grades and offering solutions around these commoditized products. I think we continue to see that in all segments, even in fairly mature markets like PVC. What we are seeing is that you can find ways to differentiate certain grades, tailor them to specific applications, couple them with other material offerings that will allow you to get fairly significant price premiums. We see similar trends in polyethylene, we see similar trends in other commoditized polymer markets as well, but you can enjoy premiums of anywhere from 9 to 20 cents per pound in some of these market segments.